I was curious about what happens when you mix alcohol and watercolor painting. No, I didn't get drunk, but I am really fascinated with the effects that I got with using rubbing alcohol onto wet washes of watercolor paint. I have a dropper bottle with rubbing alcohol. I have a spray bottle just that you get at the travel aisle in your store. I have a nice brush for putting on the paint washes, and I have an old brush for dipping into the alcohol so I can sprinkle. And then I have another brush that I wanted to use to do lines and streaks. I also have some cut up credit card, my watercolor paints, and I'm ready to go. So what I did for the first side was I wet the paper with clear water, and then I just kind of plopped in three different colors. I put in some phthalo blue, pretty generous with the pigments here, and I put in some Winsor violet, and then I put in some quinacridone rose. And then while it's still pretty wet, you can see that it's really wet. It's going to take a little while for that to soak into my paper. So let's see what happens when we spritz it while it's very wet. That's pretty cool. And I'll put some drops on. I really like how that, if I do more than one drop in the same place, it's really, really wet. So I'm going to just sort of soak up some of that water and wipe it off of here. And then as it starts drying off, I'm going to spray it some more. Now I'll take some alcohol on my ankle brush. I think these are going to be flowers. And I can take a corner of a card a little more spray. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do this one, but I'm not going to wet the paper first. I mean, watercolor does have to be wet to get it to apply, but not having the paper wet first is significantly reducing the amount of water that I'm using. some Windsor Violet. You can see it's not flowing at all. And now some quinacridone rose. I'm going to spray it. Do a drop there. One thing about my experiment here is that these are staining pigments. So maybe we can test it out on another sheet of paper with non-staining pigments. Holding the water bottle very far away, probably a good foot. Try this one with some alcohol and make stem. It's almost like you can paint by lifting. So it looks like the alcohol is dispersing the pigment away from where you applied it. Now I'm going to sprinkle. Let's sprinkle over here too. Wouldn't this be a great background for if you do Zentangle? When this dries, you could doodle over this. I'd love to watch it hit the pigment. And I'm going to wait for it to dry and see what happens when we put some alcohol on it after it dries. While that first one is drying, I thought I would get out some hot press paper. This is 100% hot press, 100% cotton hot press paper. And I'll do this one with some earth colors. This is Hansa Yellow Deep. Maybe I'll do a sunset. This one is Aussie Red Gold. Doesn't look that different. There you go. And let's get some Hyrule Red. And maybe finish it off with some burnt sienna. Something's happening there. Maybe I got a drop of alcohol on there. A little more red. I'm going to put a little more yellow. Make sure that it's still damp when I put on the alcohol. Okay, I think I'll spray first. That's pretty. I think I'll do some flowers or some grasses with this angle brush. Maybe this could be sunflowers. I'm going to drop some on with this. I'm just doing what comes to mind. Maybe this could be, um, maybe you could try this out and do a galaxy. My paper's getting dry and it's not having the same effect. Interesting. But I love this. It's really cool. Now this is still wet down in here. Put another one there, another one here. Now what if I take some red, splash it. I think it needs more burnt sienna down here. I'm going to use one that I dipped in alcohol because I don't want to have alcohol on my good brush. Some sepia. About some sap green. Just play. Get out a block of paper and get out some alcohol from under the cupboard and have fun. This is really fun. I'm just, look at what happened here. I just love how different things are happening with the paint that I didn't know would happen. And I just love that. I think when this dries, I'll put a couple little birds and call it good. It's kind of abstract and different and colorful and interesting, and maybe I could get out a black marker and start drawing over top of it or just leave it how it is. I want to do another one. Well, I want to do another one while that other thing dries. So I got out another block of paper. This is Fluid 100, cold pressed, 300 pound, and it's 100% cotton. And I want to try doing a galaxy. So I'll take my, I'm going to get it wet, and then I'm going to let it sit for a minute so that that water can seep into the paper. This is pretty thick paper, and you can see it's just kind of sitting on top. So I'm going to come back in a minute so you can see there. Okay, now I'm back and you can see that the sheen has faded a little, especially right here compared to up here. So I've got now some neutral tint. I know that's a mix of some different colors, so I want to see if they will separate. Some quinacridone rose, some Prussian blue, and some manganese blue hue. So I'm going to start with the manganese kind of in the middle. I'm thinking that the outsides will be dark. I'm going to put in a little bit of pinks. Oh, I love that. That's so pretty. Some blue all around the outside of this. And now some of the neutral tint. Letting it all blend together. And instead of rushing in like I did when I was super excited, I'm going to wait a few minutes and let this sink into the paper a little more. Lift some of this off. Some manganese. Galaxies are fun because there's no reference. I mean, you can look at reference photos all you want, but there are no two galaxies the same on any given day, right? Ooh, I wonder if we could do alcohol spritzing in layers. Okay, I've let it soak in for about a minute. It's still pretty wet, but I don't want it to get too dry and then not work. So I'm going to dip my older brush into the alcohol, and I'm going to start with the middle. Maybe it will land where I want it to land. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'll spritz it. And now I'll splat on some more neutral tint. Look at these little ones here. Gonna splat on some quinacridone rose. Some more Prussian blue. I'm gonna leave that alone and let it dry a little bit more. I got out some bleed proof white. If you don't know what that is, I use this instead of white gouache. I'm gonna spritz or sprinkle some of it inside here if I can. Oh my God, I love it. Now, what if I add a little bit of salt in the corners? Just a little. I don't want it to ruin the alcohol effect. And now we wait. Okay, it's all dry, and typical of watercolor, it dried a lot lighter than how it looked when it was wet. I really like the effects that we got with the alcohol. There's these little spots here, and there's little tiny ones in here, and then here's the salt, and then the white really contrasts well with that. So I was wondering earlier about what would happen if we painted over it a little bit, if we layered. So I want to get out a little bit more of the neutral tint, and I want to go over some of this galaxy, not all of it, and see what happens when it dries. I'm going to also take some Prussian blue. Go right over that bleed-proof white. And now with no pigment, I'm going to go over the rest of it. And we'll come back. So now it's dry, or almost dry. I didn't get that part. But you can see that the alcohol is still showing through. Look at that. I think I want to turn this into one of those forests where people are like, you could put a rock formation in the foreground, or you could put a forest in the foreground. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. It'll be interesting to see if the alcohol shows through down here. So now I'm going to just go yeah, I'll be back when this is dry. Okay, that's one layer of probably a medium value of neutral tint. And I can sort of see some of the alcohol peeking through. And I like it. It gives it some texture. I think I want to just add a few more little pointy things with a smaller brush. Do a little better on these trees. And a little more splatting. All done. Isn't that pretty? Now, before I wrap up, I wanted to come back and see if anything will happen when I put alcohol on the dry watercolor. This is all dry. So here's the dropper. I think I'll put some right there. It's just kind of disappearing. Okay. You probably can't see, but when I paint it over right there, I can see a little bit of darker, a darker spot there. There they all are, all finished and dry. I had a really fun time experimenting with alcohol on watercolor, and I hope you do too, and I hope you share with me what you make. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.